Are you all blind or just heartless? The billionaire's voice thundered across the boardroom, echoing off marble walls. His mother sat trembling beside him, her aged hands moving desperately through the air, signing words no one in the room could understand. Executives shifted uncomfortably. No one dared speak. Then a small voice, gentle but firm, rose from the back of the room. "I can understand her, sir." Every head turned, and standing there, holding a mop taller than himself, was a 10-year-old janitor's son. World knew Alexander Harrington as a genius, billionaire, the kind who could buy anything but. Today's meeting was monumental. The signing of a global deal worth billions. The entire board of directors had gathered. Men in tailored suits, women in diamond watches, the air thick with money and fear, but beside Alexander sat a figure who didn't belong to their world. His mother, Eleanor Harrington. Once the company's founder, now frail and in a wheelchair. She had lost her hearing years ago but refused to step away. To Alexander, her presence was symbolic, a tribute, but to her, it was personal. She wasn't there to watch her son make history. She was there to warn him, and no one knew what she was trying to say. The presentation began. Smooth, rehearsed, perfect. The deal would merge Harrington Global with Tokyo Steel Holdings, tripling profits overnight. Eleanor's sharp gray eyes scanned every line of the documents in front of her. She frowned. Her hands started moving quickly, fingers spelling urgent words in sign language. Alexander turned to her, confused. "Mother, not now," he whispered, but she persisted. Her gestures fast, deliberate, almost angry. No one spoke her language. The executives exchanged awkward glances. One coughed. Someone muttered, "What is she doing?" Then came the whisper that cut through the tension. "She's losing it." Alexander slammed his fist on the table. "Enough. Can't anyone here understand her?" The room went dead silent, and that's when a young voice broke through the tension like a blade of light through a storm. "I can." Everyone turned. At the far end of the boardroom, a maintenance worker stood frozen beside a cleaning cart. Next to him, his son, a small boy in worn sneakers and wide, bright eyes. The billionaire frowned. "Who said that?" The boy took a small step forward. "My name's Caleb, sir." "I can understand her." The room rippled with disbelief. "Security," one executive started, but Alexander raised his hand. "Wait." Caleb approached Eleanor's wheelchair slowly, his small face soft with respect. Then he lifted his hands and began to sign. Her eyes widened instantly. Her lips trembled. Then, for the first time that morning, she smiled. They began a silent conversation, hands moving gracefully like two souls finally being heard. Every executive watched in stunned silence. After a minute, Caleb turned to Alexander. "She says the deal is a trap." Alexander blinked. "What?" Caleb swallowed nervously but kept going. "She says she read the fine print before the meeting. If you sign this deal, you lose control of your own company. The investors are planning to take over." Murmurs erupted. Executives exchanged panicked looks. The lead attorney's face turned pale. "She says you were blinded by greed," Caleb continued softly, "and she says, she loves you too much to watch you ruin everything she built." Eleanor reached out, touching her son's arm, signing something slower now. Caleb translated, his voice shaking. She says, "Alex, you've built towers of gold, but you forgot the value of trust." The billionaire stood frozen. The deal that was supposed to be his greatest victory was suddenly poison. He turned to his team. "Is this true?" The legal advisor stuttered. "Sir, the clause is minor, but technically, yes, the Japanese firm would gain controlling interest." Alexander slammed the contract shut. The sound cracked through the silence like thunder. "Cancel the deal," Alexander said coldly. "But, sir, I said cancel it." The room went silent again. Executives hurried out. Their voices hushed. When the doors closed, only Alexander, his mother, and the janitor's family remained. He stared at Caleb for a long time. "How do you know sign language?" Caleb looked down shyly. "My mom's deaf, sir. I talk to her every day that way." The old woman smiled, her hands trembling as she signed another message. Caleb translated softly. She says, "You finally listened today, not to money, not to power, but to a child." Alexander's throat tightened. He sank to his knees beside her. "I'm sorry," Eleanor touched his cheek, smiling through tears. She signed one word: proud. 2 days later, the story exploded across headlines. Billionaire's deaf mother saved company. Thanks to 10-year-old boy, reporters swarmed. Harrington Global Tower. Cameras flashed, but Alexander didn't hide. He embraced the story. He stood before microphones, his voice steady but humble. "My mother has been my greatest teacher. And yesterday, a boy named Caleb taught me what I never learned from all my years in business: humility." He paused. "From this day on, our company will sponsor free sign language programs in every school in this city, because silence should never be a barrier to understanding." The crowd erupted in applause, but in that moment, Alexander wasn't watching them. He was watching his mother, and the small boy holding her hand at the side of the stage. After the press conference, Alexander called the janitor and his son into his office. Marcus, the father, looked nervous. "Sir, if my boy said something wrong." Alexander shook his head. "He said everything right." He slid an envelope across the desk. Inside was a scholarship letter and a house deed. Marcus blinked in disbelief. "Sir, we can't." Alexander smiled. "You can. You're not working for me anymore. You're working with me." Caleb's eyes widened. "With you?" "Yes," Alexander said. "You and your dad are joining my new foundation, Hands of Hope. You'll help other kids learn what you already know: how to listen with your heart." Months later, at a packed auditorium, Alexander stood beside Eleanor and Caleb as they launched the foundation. Behind them, a banner read, "Hands of Hope, because silence has a voice, too." Eleanor began signing her speech as Caleb translated for her, this time on live television. "She says," he spoke gently, "you don't need ears to hear love, and you don't need power to make a difference." The crowd stood. Tears fell. Cameras flashed, and Alexander looked at his mother, the woman who had once built an empire, now teaching him how to build a legacy. He whispered under his breath, "You were right, Mom. I finally learned to listen. In a world full of noise, sometimes the greatest heroes are the ones who listen when no one else will." A boy without power gave a billionaire something priceless: humility, and a mother who had lost her hearing gave her son the wisdom to finally hear. Maybe the real miracle wasn't that Caleb understood sign language. Maybe it's that he reminded the world, you don't need ears to listen, only a heart willing to hear. Comment below, would you have stepped forward like Caleb? Tell us where you're watching from and share this story to remind others. Kindness speaks every language. Subscribe for more cinematic stories that prove. Even in silence, humanity still speaks the loudest.